I'm John Grafft, and I love Chicago real estate. Between showings, I stop in my favorite places, talk with local business owners, and bring their story to you. This is my Chicago.
Competition entry for the Architectural Structural Design Competition for Aluminum Association as a student. He was my professor and my kind of, I guess professor advisor for that competition. I won that competition. He's like, wow, Tom, this is great. And then he said, I want you to work for me. I'm like, all right, great. So this is like May. And then 2 weeks later, when school's over, he goes, sorry, I don't have a job for you. I'm like, oh, shit. So I'm sitting there typing up my resume. A day later, he calls me, he goes, well, can't work in the office, but do you want to work on a construction site? I'm like, yeah.
Interesting.
And that's what happened. And I started working for him. I worked in a construction site for like 4 months, and then I went to the office, started drafting little by little, and then like literally 3 years later, I was like the number 3 guy, and then another year later, I was number 2 guy.
When you're on the construction site, what are you doing?
I was a superintendent. I built this building. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
And what does that look like day to day, and what are those activities look like?
It's literally superintending. I mean, literally talking to every single subcontractor, saying, what are we doing today? And they would say, hey, this drawing, I got a question about that. And I would, back in that first experience, I had no idea. I was an architect graduate, but didn't understand how it actually happens.
And you just got put on the job, you're looking at the finished plans, but you didn't design the plans.
No,
Yes.
no. So it was an amazing experience to learn. And in 2 years, I learned how to build a building. I remember how this kind of muddy construction site became a finished product, with, with carpeting and tile and a kitchen in there. And then we started putting in furniture, and we started hanging artwork.
What type of building was it?
This was in Evanston, called North Point. And so this thing became a building, and I'm like, wow, so this is it. This is how you do it. It was just kind of magical because, when you're a student, you're learning about drawings and kind of sort of what construction is like. But once you're there and really doing it, but then it becomes this kind of shell, this structure, this enclosure. But then like magic, you add furniture, you add, artwork, and it becomes a home.
There's something about cooling, adding the textures, adding the life to it. This room without this art and these couches, this fireplace behind us, it's just a room.
Yeah.
But it's so much more important than just the design aspect to the actual interior design of it. Are you working on that side of it as well too?
Yeah. So I find that people love design. Even if they don't talk about it, they feel good when they're in a building or a space. They don't know why, exactly. They don't know why, but they know there's something going on and it's special and they feel good, and they have these kind of surprising kind of wow moments where they kind of, they look at this, this fireplace, this is just, it's water cut metal panel, and we had it rusted. We left it outside to rust on purpose. But it has this kind of natural.
These designs are done with water?
This cutout is a water jet cutout, yeah.
Okay.
And it has this palm motif and flower motif, and but it's cool, and people see it. They kind of notice. And same thing with the artwork. We collaborate with a lot of artists, and this artist is Jennifer Ardolino from Sarasota, and she's amazing, and she really complements our spaces in a good way. And so we like to use, it's colorful, it's fun, because we try to keep the palette of the building, pretty neutral, grays and concrete and warm, browns and whites, that kind of stuff. And but the furniture placement and the whole thing together is super important to make the space usable, but also like comfortable for people. And you want to wow people. You have to, it's in this business. The competition is so great that you can differentiate yourself with only a few things, and design is one of them. You can differentiate with location and price and service, the level of service that you give people. But the thing that arches everything is the design, because people they just feel good. They go, wow, you know, they go see 5 apartment buildings in a day, and they want to kind of make a decision, and you know, they come in here and they go, wow, you know, I could live here.
Yeah.
And it's a quick yes no kind of feeling that you get.
By the end of the day, you're not even sure what you looked at, but you'll remember how you felt the place.
Yeah.
And I always try to brand a place. Okay, that was the concrete building, that was the Jennifer Ardolino building, whatever it may be, and that way it sticks in someone's head a little bit more. But when someone walks into a room and it's grand and it feels right, they don't forget that. That leaves the impression. The impression is what they're talking about later that day. They might be sitting in dinner with their family or their spouse, whatever it may be. Like, that one made me feel good. I liked it.
Yeah. Well, I find people, they pledge no allegiance to location nowadays. I find people, they'll visit Streeterville, they'll visit Lincoln Park, South Loop, West Loop, and the Loop, all in the same day, and they're all candidates to where they want to live. It's like kind of amazing, because before everybody was kind of like, I want to live here. Now it's the building, and it's the kind of the monetary kind of financial, you know,
What's it called?
aspect. Yeah, what does it cost? How much am I going to have to spend a month? Because they're worried about, you know, their car payment, their you know, phone payment, you know, they're going out and eating and so forth, entertainment, and it's all part of the budget. So this is such an important thing. But the thing you said about branding is super important, because it's not only the design, you know, the floor plans, the layout, then what it looks and feels like, you know, but there's got to be this kind of brand that brings it all together. Like, this is the park line, right? And we've done other projects like, you know, Linea and Jeff Jack, and they have to have this kind of cohesive feel, and that's the brand. So we create this brand that it just oozes through the whole thing, the whole experience. And it's the way that you're greeted at the front desk. It's the way that you feel when you're in the space, and that, you know, you come into our floor plans in the apartments, and right away you see the kitchen. It's either a linear or a galley kitchen. You have a little space to sit and eat. Whether in the smallest unit, we'll still have a table with a Deuce, so you can have breakfast or dinner, just 2 people.
What's a Deuce?
A Deuce is just two chairs, you know, and a table. Even in the smallest unit, it's not like some people omit the table. You need to have that table. And then you have the living room, and then you have the space to study or work from home. And then you have a balcony. So, you know, half our units have balconies. And then you have a definable, you know, bedroom or bedroom area. And we try to expand that space with sliding doors and all this stuff, so you get this spacious feel. But it's not only that floor plan, but it's the way you're greeted, the way you experience all the amenities. And we have really amenity-rich, you know, buildings. You know, people are looking for, you know, affordable, you know, walkable, amenity-filled, you know, apartment buildings. That's what they want, you know. And that whole thing has to tie together, and it's the artwork, and it's the, you know, the color of the sofa, and the color of, you know, even the books on the table. It's all tied into that feel where you feel it, you know, it's special, you know. And that takes you know, that takes a lot of work, and we have a lot of people working on this thing to make that brand work. It's from the logo to the name of the project to the coloration in the building. You know, the whole thing is all part of that brand.
What's that process look like when you're creating the brand for the building at the very beginning level?
Yeah, well, you start from a blank sheet of paper, and you know, the architecture starts with the architecture. I always love that, you know, the graphic designers, and then our you know, leasing agents and our management you know, company, you know, Lincoln Management. You know, we start with a blank piece of paper, but they ask about the architecture first. They want to know about the building. So the building really drives that. And
who's creating the brand? Is Lincoln Property Management have something to do with that aspect of it?
yeah, they have. It's a team effort. It's kind of a tripart effort. It's us as the architect developer. It's Lincoln, our management leasing company, and then it's Upshift, who's our graphics and kind of collateral company that makes the brochures and the websites and the logos. But we have this kind of, you know, intense, you know, kind of conversation and debate about how to name it, how to brand it, what are the key aspects of it. But again, it starts with the architecture, and it kind of just starts falling into place. All these things like, oh yeah, we should do that. Oh, that part of that building could be part of this, logo or something like that. Or like say here, we're at Parkline, right? So this is the proximity to Millennium Park. So that's how the name Parkline happened, because we're a straight line to the park.
Okay.
So it's all super simple. But that's a fun part of the process, because we're the designers, the architects, the developers. We have Clark Construction's been doing our construction on the last going on 5 buildings now. So we have a great partnership there. So we find these good partnerships and kind of keep refining the process and keep getting better. Like Linea was better than JeffJack. Parkline is better than Linea. We keep learning and improving on that and making the customer experience as good as it possibly can be.
So you have almost a Six Sigma to what you're doing to refine that project as you move forward and getting better with each one. Why is this project better than the other one? Are there any specific things that stood out that you learned on this one that you picked up from the others?
It's interesting. There's, it's, on Linea, we had 2 floors of amenities stacked at the very top of the building. So on 31 and 32, on those floors, we had all amenities. And here we wanted to split it up because we were going to have these 2 products, the apartments and the penthouse apartments. And we wanted to have this separated experience. So we actually separated all the amenities. And then COVID happened, which actually kind of was like, it was interesting because it was good to spread people out over multiple spaces, multiple floors.
I like it when it's spread out.
Yeah,
It gives you, if you're let's say you're showing your building, okay, we're on this level, now let me show you another level. And you have this tour that expands to all these different places when you're doing it, and it's more fun when you're living there. Let's say I live on 25 and we have a kitchen on 26 and then we have amenities on 6. Well then I can between all the levels.
Yeah.
And I don't have to go to one place, and people are going to be spread out more because of it. So it is a blessing for
Yeah.
us.
So we split the amenities here, and I think also from a design standpoint, we took JeffJack and we kind of upgraded things during construction. We had the benefit of having money to spend to upgrade it. So Linea had all those upgrades already as the base, and then we upgraded those during construction. And same thing here, Parkline. So Parkline had everything included that Linea and JeffJack had, and then we upgraded even again. So we keep getting it better, refining it, improving it, learning from the past experiences, and I love that part of it. It's just a learning process, and you just keep learning, improving, taking feedback from tenants and users, and yeah.
In this amenity race, where do you find the largest benefit in what you're offering people? Is there any particular formula?
I think, it was a race. I think the race has settled down with amenities, and before I think people had too many amenities, and I would walk some of the competition and it would be literally one gray tiled room after another gray tiled room, and you're not sure what you're supposed to do there. So we try hard to make sure that the way the furniture is placed, that the program is very evident. Like you're supposed to, this is like a chill space. You're supposed to read a book or do your work here.
Defined purpose for
Yeah, this is, it's super clear.
This has that.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Sometimes people, the competition, they've kind of overdone that. I think it's settled down now, and I think people are being more I guess they're kind of defining this kind of amenity space better. Intentional, that's what I'm trying to say. They're more intentional about it. So, but I think, amenities are important because, depending on the size of the apartment that you rent, you're not always wanting to be in your space. You want to go and kind of socialize a little bit and be outside and get go on a exterior terrace and see the views, and so that's part of the experience. This is part of your apartment, literally, and you have a community here. So it's a way to engage. So I think that's important, and I think and we try to we add landscaping and keeping it green and ecological too, in terms of some of the things we do, and just make warm, cozy spaces. It's got to be, you got to feel like you're at home and you're comfortable, and you want to show it off to your friends or your family, you know, when they're over.
How do you pick the locations you've chosen?
You know, it's very difficult to find land, and as a developer, you try to, and it's so competitive, you try to, you know, get places that, you know, the test I always have is, would I live here? You know, would I live at this intersection of, you know, First and Main? And if the answer is yes, then it's a go. But it's very difficult to find land. You know, land is expensive. You know, the zoning process, the entitlement process is very complicated. So it's an unpredictable process to find land, and you kind of, it's reactive. You know, you kind of say, oh wow, this is available now, and
does that come to you privately? Does that come open on the market? Multiple people are bidding? What does it look like?
it's all of that. I mean, at this point, you know, I get 1 or 2 emails a day for some new property, because I'm, you know, in all these broker kind of lists. And some of them are off market, and some of those work or don't work, you know. And then sometimes, you know, we hard bid with, you know, 5 or 6 other developers.
Is that a sealed bid process when that happens, or how does it work?
It's not sealed bid, no. It's very, you know, kind of organic, and sometimes, you know, you're lucky and you know, your price is right, and plus you also have to prove to the seller that you're capable of closing.
Yeah.
So I think we're at that point now where, you know, we're in that higher echelon group. You know, we're a very small company, but we're in that higher echelon group in terms of competing for, you know, the best sites. I mean, we're not buying the $50 million or $100 million site that some of the, you know, the biggest developers do. But, you know, we get, you know, we like to be in this kind of range of about, you know, 200 to 400 units.
Okay.
That's
What does a piece of
comfortable.
land like this cost?
This one cost $19 million, which is like
What's the
amazing.
square footage of it?
It's about 26,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there a zoning change process here when you got it?
This was actually as of right.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did
Fair,
this.
you're right downtown.
Yeah.
It's already built in.
Yeah.
Is there a premium on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Big premium.
For sure.
You can buy, you can start a series of permits.
Basically, yes. Yeah.
So you get the piece of land. What does the soft process look like for designing it? And what do you spend on that, time-wise, money-wise, to create the building, the idea of it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's you know, the kind of the basic design. What is the massing, the height, how many units? That tells you a lot right away, and you can figure that out pretty quickly. And then you can apply, you know, a guesstimate in terms of what the cost would be and the income would be, because this is, you know, basically a you know, cash generating, you know, enterprise. This thing creates, you know, income. So that's pretty quick in terms of just the very initial concept. And then once you get past a few, you know, kind of initial like go, no-go decisions, it goes pretty quickly in terms of, you know, refining the design, you know, getting all the legal stuff, you know, figured out, you know, getting it financed. That's you know, one of the biggest things you have to do. And then, you know, all the little nuts and bolts of, you know, insurance and, you know, marketing, and, you know, how you're going to lease it and when you're going to lease it, and, you know, all that stuff. So there's a lot of that that's called the soft cost side. And it's, you know, at this point, you know, I think, you know, we're pretty good at it, and we know how to get through that part. But you have to have a good idea. It doesn't matter if you don't have a good idea, and if you're not in a good location, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
So it's really important to know and understand the market and where you fit into that market. You know, what level and where do you fit in? What you're offering, you know, can you explain exactly what you're offering to the market, to the tenant? Why should they live here?
You know, every building that's out there, you see this change. I think ever since Spoke came out in River West is when I noticed it. But people were getting away from this. We're a luxury building because every building is a luxury building. Every apartment's a luxury apartment, and the term has lost complete meaning. I mean, it's as thin as water. I don't know what it means anymore. I define luxury was like a powder room, and that's where I start. I go from there. This doesn't feel like luxury, but it is luxurious. But to call it luxury, I think would be the wrong idea. It's hip, it's fun. I don't know if luxury is what even people are even looking for. That's a different offering. Like, I guess one Bennett might be luxury, right? But I had clients that have walked there and they've walked here, like, this is cool, I'd rather live here. When you finance a building, what does that look like? How do you start that process? And you buy the land first. So do you have a pool of investors that are working with you, or walk me through it?
Yeah, I mean, to your first point about luxury, everything has to be luxury theoretically today. You know, but you know, when we announced the penthouse collection here, which you were part of that kind of announcement, you know, we used the term ultra luxury just to kind of, you know,
put it into a different tier.
Yeah, to kind of, you know, supersede that term and make it better even. So, and you know, we've searched for words to describe that kind of, you know, bespoke.
Yeah.
A bespoke, you know, design, experience, all that stuff. So people are searching for words to kind of really explain where they're at. But, you know, the fact of the matter is everybody is really doing a great job. I mean, all the buildings in Chicago. I mean, Chicago's a very kind of refined market, you know.
Refined is my favorite word.
Yeah.
For this type of product, because refined is what you're really looking for.
Yeah.
You're looking for a refined living situation, refined home, refined building.
Yeah, and I think you have to have a certain level because it's too much competition, and the price, you know, level that you're renting these out at, you know, it dictates a certain level of expectation and finish and so forth. So, and you know, like Bennett Place you mentioned, I mean, that's beautiful, and that is a high level of design and stuff. And it's also kind of the look and feel. What, you know, it's all about design. You know, they're at this kind of more kind of transitional style. It's a little bit more classical, but there is this kind of modern kind of feel to it. It's well done, you know.
The door hardware is labeled and it's pure metal.
Yeah,
you feel it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But you know, those are all design decisions, and it's catering to a certain person who wants that look, you know. And so all these different things they're design decisions, you know. And it's funny, in Chicago, everybody's kind of moving towards, you know, more modern, contemporary kind of, you know, aesthetics. But there's certain people that want, you know, that more classical look, and it's just a design decision, and it's a marketing decision, you know. So, but in terms of how you finance these things, yeah, you need a pool of investors. That gives you the kind of the seed money to start. And then you have a bank loan, and then usually you get some sort of institutional money that helps you kind of bridge the gap between the equity and the debt.
Okay.
So it's, you know, if it's a $100 million project, that's, you know, it's a lot of capital, and you have to kind of work it out in terms of the cost of money and the efficiency of how you can kind of, you know, put this money together in terms of cost and all that stuff and expectations.
Is the institutional investor planning to be there for the long haul?
Sometimes, but not always. A lot of times they're just there to kind of merchant build, like that's what we do. We basically build it, stabilize it, and then we sell it to another investor. And it's
the pension fund of the Iowa school teachers.
Yeah,
or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. And because they're looking for a certain return, and but you know, I think it depends on the time and the kind of economic situation. You know, right now it's very profitable to build these things and sell them right away. but there may be a time it may change where it's better just to hold on to it for a longer term. The institutional investor, there's different types of institutional investors. So we're usually looking for the one that wants to build it and also sell it and then move on.
Okay. You're seeing fewer condos being built. You guys did 20 to 25?
24.
24 on top. And then you decided to change it, which seemed to be the right decision because those went quickly. What was the idea to have that 24, and how do you look at that from a financing perspective because someone's going to own that portion? So how does that change the overall formula?
Yeah, so originally we had 189 apartments and 24 penthouse apartments. That's actually was the original idea, and that's how it was permitted and everything, and it's how it was explained to everybody. And then at some point we were going to basically create this condo regime and create condos, but after the completion of the building. And we marketed the building with the apartments, and those leased up super fast. And the condos, we couldn't sell them.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the COVID and civil unrest, all that stuff, making people not very comfortable being downtown. So for whatever reason, after 2 years of marketing it, we didn't sell any. And we just saw that there was an opportunity with higher level, larger penthouse apartments, that there weren't that many. And the ones that were available were, at a high number, high price.
I walked through yesterday the apartment that Lydia's chef is going to be living in.
Yeah.
It's paying $32,000 a month. Minus the outdoor space, your apartment is nicer, your penthouse is nicer.
Yeah.
And that's the immediate comparison I had when I looked at it. So the place is beautiful. I'm not knocking it in any way. He has a completely different outdoor setup. But I was like, $20,000, that's a great deal.
Yeah.
And my wife saw your place, and she's like, I don't know if that's worth 6 times that, but it's definitely worth 20. We're talking about different numbers. And it really put your place in perspective and why it went so quickly when you put that on the market.
Yeah.
Because there is a smaller audience of people looking to rent that, but that audience is here.
Yeah.
And they want a place that impresses everyone, that really knocks it out of the park, and people see it and they're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we looked at how many penthouse apartments there were, and there weren't that many that were really nice. I mean, really nice. They were basically apartments that were large, where we had created these as condos. So the level of finish is just so much higher, as good as anything. Yeah. So I think it's actually very interesting, and so now it's renting really fast, and it's amazing. And so we turned on a dime and made that decision, knowing that the timing was everything. And
you did it the right time of year.
We did. Yeah. We did. And so yeah, it's like in real estate, you never know what the answer is. You just kind of like got to react and listen to the market, listen to people, and figure it out.
When you've sold, or when you've built, stabilized, sold the other buildings, what does that process look like? Who's purchased it at the end?
Yeah, like institutional groups that are looking for this. Usually they're advisors for like you said, a pension fund or something. It's an interesting process. Very sophisticated, buyers. The brokers are sophisticated. The whole presentation is, very formal, and it's actually very simple in the end. It's super simple. It's just like, what's the, net operating income of your building, and and do you believe that number, and and you prove it. But people always have their opinions about this or that, or how they want to change the service, or what are real estate taxes going to be, or whatever other part of it. And then you agree on everybody agrees on this NOI, and then it's the cap rate. And every city, every different real estate food group has a different cap rate. It's this kind of like subjective number that the mass agrees on. So in Chicago it's a certain number right now, but that would be different in Denver or Phoenix or Nashville.
Okay.
And it'd be different for an apartment building versus an office building or a hotel. So the cap rate is just something that everybody kind of sort of agrees on, and you divide your NOI by this cap rate, and then that tells you what your value of your building is.
What are investors looking for in Chicago?
I think they're looking for, you know, quality buildings in good locations. You know, and you know, we're in the process of selling this building, and we've had some very positive reactions in terms of just, they said that they want to own this building. This is the kind of building they would like to own. And it's, so I think this is, you know, this is a Chicago building, you know, well built, well designed, attractive to the tenant, walkable, all those good things, you know, sustainable. You know, there's a kind of, everybody has a kind of, you know, either requirement or kind of a, you know, a want to own a sustainable building, a building that performs
ESG
well.
business,
Yeah.
people going after that. How about in the cap rate? What are people looking for?
Well, I mean, they want, I mean, the cap rate that they're, you know, that they're looking at here today is, you know, lower than it ever has been in Chicago. But you know, it's this arbitrage of the cap rate that you can build it at and the cap rate that you can sell it at. So that's the sliver that's the sliver that they're looking at. And then also in the future, you know, seeing what rent growth would be, and you know, come 7 years from now, what that, you know, kind of delta is. That's all they're playing with. But those are big numbers. You know, those are big numbers those are real numbers. Those are meaningful. And so then, you know, there's money, you know, to the tune of, you know, $100 million, $200 million that are in these kind of, for these kind of buildings, you know. That's what they're playing with.
On the public markets, you're seeing SPACs, direct listings. Is there any type of disruption that's changing this space in terms of bringing a product like this to market directly, or cutting out any of the middlemen in the process?
Well, I mean, there's obviously, you know, Airbnb and that type of, you know, that app, you know, that changed the market. And you have all these kind of things that are coming in, you know, where you can literally, there's an app and you can rent a room like anywhere, or you can rent a, you know, a conference room in some, you know, building, or a part of a restaurant, you know, a table at a restaurant you can rent, you know. So all that disruption is very interesting. We're kind of not yet affected by it yet. You know, we try not to do monthly rentals. That just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
turnover.
yeah, but you know, we have some corporate housing. You know, very minimal. You know, 5 to 10% of the units have corporate housing, but they're always, you know, long-term leases. So it's, you know, quality, high-end companies.
So you rent it to Manor Suites or Sweet Home or one of those companies, and then they hold it, and they're paying the rent.
They're paying the rent.
Standard rent, right?
Standard rent.
And then they have their own arbitrage. They're going to try and make that difference in between that.
Yep.
Okay.
And it works well. And you know, corporations, they want to have a nice, you know, kind of a nicer, you know, offering than just, you know, a hotel. So it's kind of cool.
There were 47 of them in the building I live in, and Jump Trading was the company that did it. I think the kids loved it. You could always spot who was living in one. Just you could. That was the reality of it. Some people complained about it. I thought it was fine, but 47 was a high number.
That's a lot. That's
like
a lot.
I don't know, 300 unit building, something like that.
Yeah. We try to keep it down to, you know, maybe a dozen.
Mm-hmm. With affordable housing, how is that coming into your numbers, and how does that work?
So our new project at 160 North Elizabeth in Fulton Market, yeah, it is, Randolph and Elizabeth. So we are providing 20% affordable on site. Total number of units is 375 units, and 75 of them are affordable.
Okay.
And I think it's great. You know, it's great that you can provide this this product, and it's you know, it's in the whole, you know, of the building. It's you know, everybody shares the amenities. It's a kind of a European concept, you know. I mean, they have, you know, affordable housing in Europe that's done the same way, you know, like in Holland and Denmark and stuff, and it works really well. So I think it's great, and you know, obviously it puts a burden on the project in terms of costs, but I think it's the right thing to do. Okay. And so yeah, we're happy to do it. We're you know, we did something like this in Evanston a long time ago. They said, well, you have to do affordable housing. We're like, okay, well, show us your program. They're like, well, we don't have a program. So, so yeah, no, really, my attorney actually, Bruce, he wrote, he kind of picked some good aspects from about 7 different, you know, affordable housing programs all across the country, and that became the program that our plan development was approved with. And that then became the structure for Evanston's affordable housing program, which is still, you know, it's obviously been edited and updated, but so we've had a lot of experience with this, and we're happy to do it, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Do you ever do offsite?
We have not had to, and to me that seems like it's very costly.
Okay.
You're doing a whole nother project, you know. I mean, here, look at 160 North Elizabeth. You have this whole infrastructure, has sewers and water and electrical and all the amenities, and it's all there.
And economies of scale to everything.
Economies of scale to everything. So to me, it doesn't make sense to do it. And you know, I think, you know, people, you know, who are renting kind of understand the whole concept of it, and I think it works best this way, where it's on site.
What are the requirements for the city of Chicago? So you're doing 20 over there. Is it 10?
Yeah, the pilot program is just changing right now, so it's 10, but it's going to go to 20.
Okay, so you're staying ahead of the curve by doing that.
Well, it was kind of the negotiation with the alderman and with the plan commission, and the alderman there, Walter Burnett, that's his kind of thing.
He's strong on that.
Yeah, he's very clear about that, and we support that. So it was good. It was a good partnership, good working process through the whole thing, and that was what we said. We're going to provide a first-class, A+ building, highly amenitized, walkable, eco-friendly, beautiful architecture, and with the 20% affordable on-site, you know, and active. There's retail on the first floor on Randolph and Elizabeth. So it's going to be a super cool project. We're going to start this project very soon too.
So you started as an architect, you started on the job site for a few months, and you got into the office. It seems like a lot in between. There's so much. What do those formidable years look like for you?
Well, again, so like I was at IIT, architecture student. My professor, you know, said, you know, I want you to work for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. A week later, he calls me and he says, you know, sorry, I don't have a place for you. I'm like, oh my God. So I started typing up my resume, and another day later, he calls me. He said, you know what? This is David Hovey at Optima, and so he goes, do you want to work on a construction site? I'm like, yes, please. You know, I just thought I'd get my foot in the door. So I learned a lot on the construction site. Then I went back into the office and started drafting and working on, you know, drawings and, you know, young architect kind of, you know.
What does that look like when you're working for that office? Are they giving you projects to work on, or are you just drafting things and hoping something sticks to the wall? Or like, is there a project, or like, can we see your ideas?
No, it's very, you know, it's kind of very supportive. You know, when you're a young architect, you're kind of told, here, go draw this.
Okay.
And you get a lot of direction and a lot of helps. Because, you know, I mean, 5 years of school, but you still are learning. You really kind of only know maybe about 5% of what you need to know as an architect. So that's your beginning part. So you are doing very rudimentary drawings in the beginning. And, but you're learning a lot, you're a sponge. And so I was at Optima for 7 years, and David Hovey, you know, he taught me everything. You know, it was an amazing experience to learn not only how to be an architect, but how to build the building, how to finance the building, how to market the building, you know, and even back then, those buildings were very well branded at Optima. You know, it was branded better than you know, anything else in Chicago. So they really knew what they were doing, and still do. They do amazing buildings, but so yeah, it was amazing, and I'm glad I learned how to be a developer and not just an architect. And you know, like I said before, you kind of, you know, at some point this shell of this structure and enclosure and this landscaping outside, all of a sudden it becomes a home. Because you add furniture and you add, you know, artwork and you know, knickknacks, and you add people, and all of a sudden this is a home. It's a magical process. It's amazing.
What was your first project?
First project was in Evanston called North Point that I worked on, you know, and that was.
You had left Optima at that stage?
No, this was my first project at Optima. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was 121 condos and townhouses in Evanston. My first project on my own was at Southport and Clybourne and Webster,
Okay.
a little 6-flat. And I had called, you know, there was about 35 guys that said, Tom, if you ever start your company, call me. I want to invest in you. I'm like, okay, so called them up. I said, remember when you said that? They're like, yeah.
How many seated you?
Yeah, they all seated
They
me.
all did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did, and you know, to the tune of, you know, 25,000 or 100,000, and but that was, you know, big money, and was able to do a 6-flat, and I had a relationship with LaSalle Bank back then, and you know, they, you know, the old fax machine where the paper would curl and fall on the ground. So I pick up these 3 pieces of paper, and it's like, you know, an offer to borrow me $1.6 million for a 6-flat. I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. So I got this
That's a lot
seed
for a
money.
6-flat, isn't
No.
No?
That's
It
about right.
sounds like that's what you would need today, maybe. So when was
A
that?
lot more. This is 1996.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, got this first project together, and you know, sold them, and you know, started creating this kind of team of brokers and engineers and consultants, and you know, an attorney, and all that. Just created a team that we just kept replicating, and every project was twice as big as the one before it.
Okay.
And then I realized Lincoln Park, the land in Lincoln Park was so expensive, and the numbers didn't work. I was trying to pencil this out. I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? So I realized the land was just so expensive. So a broker friend of mine said, you know, you should look at Evanston. I'm like, Evanston? But she was right, and I bought a piece of property there and did 31 units at 1415 North, or 1415 Sherman in Evanston. And it got written up by the New York Times. And it kind of started, it was one of the projects that started this kind of Evanston, you know, condo craze. And that then, with some other bigger companies like Optima and some other ones, it became 300 apartments or condos a year. And that sustained for about 10 years. So that's how I got started.
So you were doing condos in the beginning, and then you had to transition to apartments. Were you hurt during that transition at all? Were you holding on to condos when it wasn't good to be?
No, it was, so the recession was very difficult. I mean, we basically crash landed and had to start over. So yeah, the 2008, 2009 was very, very difficult. We had to give up our projects and had to start over. And so 2013 was our first project, Jeff Jack, and we started from scratch. And actually, Jeff Jack was the first apartment building we've ever done.
Okay.
So the banks were like, okay, you've done condos, but how are you going to do an apartment building?
Were
You know?
they happy to lend for apartments but not for condos? Or why was it apartments?
Well, condos would have required a pre-sale, and we
What percentage?
probably at least a third, if not 40%, probably 50%. So it's almost impossible to do a condo building back then.
Yeah.
Even today, you need a pre-sale
It's a
requirement.
very ambitious endeavor if you're going to build a condo building in Chicago, I think.
Very difficult. So apartments is, you know, the whole concept of this enterprise is that if you build it, they will come. So that's kind of understood by everybody. So it's, the pressure's off on that part. But as soon as you have something available and you open your sales center or your leasing center, you have to start leasing these things. So your price has got to be right, your plan's got to be right, the whole thing has got to be, you know, spot on.
What's the hardest part?
Well, you know, wearing different hats, you know, every day you're kind of, you know, you're an architect,
That's what I'm thinking.
you're a developer.
Okay, so you're designing, you're building, you're managing the construction, you're leasing it out. I know you have teams for all of it, but it seems like you're involved in every part of it.
Yeah, we start one project a year. So this way I'm very involved in it. I know what's going on and I have great people working with me. But I know, you know, when, you know, like a wall gets moved 4 inches, I actually know that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I get told that, hey, we have to move that wall 4 inches because of this, and I'm aware of that. So it's not like we're doing 5 buildings at once and I really don't know what's going on, and I just know the top level stuff. I'm very involved in the details, and I think that's why, you know, we're successful, is that I want to make sure the thing is, you know, like curated to the very end and everything is in the right place. And you know, it's like when the curtain goes up and the audience is there, it's perfect. You know, that's what I think is important. But what's the hardest part? You know, right now, today, getting land is very difficult. It's expensive and the entitlement process is very difficult. Financing is very difficult, you know, because people are, you know, hesitant to invest in certain markets, you know, say Chicago.
This one in particular.
You know, I mean, if you're
talking,
to someone from New York or LA, they said, well, you know, Chicago's not a great place to invest in. Cook County's not a great place to invest in. Illinois is not a great place to invest in. So you have to kind of counter those kind of negative, you know, kind of aspects of it, and kind of prove that you can be successful, and that, you know, doing business in Chicago is not as hard as it looks, you know, because once you're doing it, it all works. But there's obviously structural problems with all that, you know, the government, but you know, they'll figure it out. This is Chicago, we figure things out, right? So that's that attitude that, you know, and then, you know, the New York firm that does business in Chicago and is fluent in Chicago knows that, and they will invest. But so land, financing, and you know, I think those are probably the 2 hardest parts of the whole process. That's what I would say. Yeah.
When you went from the 6 flat, you built higher from there. Did the project get easier with the size? Or there's many more details, but I imagine there'd be more safety in a larger project. Better economies of scale, better negotiating. I mean, especially in this environment where you have lumber fluctuating, copper, every raw material is increasing or fluctuating dramatically. How do you plan for that? How do you lock in a price today and you avoid the fluctuations in the material?
It's very difficult, and you have to kind of hedge it. And you know, when there's a volatile market and the commodities are going up and down, you're paying for it. No matter what, you're paying for that, and you're paying some sort of insurance in terms of, you know, the plumbing subcontractor. He may believe that copper is going to, you know, go up more, so he's going to put that in your price. So you're buying that.
Can you lock in the prices or do like an options contract to hedge it?
We've talked about it. It's
Yeah.
complicated. In the end, you kind of, you know, get to a point where you're really going to build this thing, and this is really the cost today, and then you get this plumber to agree that they're good for the next 18 months, and they're gonna, you know.
But you know they're factoring it in.
They're factoring it in. So it's definitely. I mean, the cost of construction has gone up, you know, I would say somewhere between 5 to 10% on a very
Over what period of time?
over the last 2-3 years,
Okay.
you know, and on these very complicated, sophisticated projects that have a lot of efficiencies in them, and it's still gone up that 5 to 10% because of everything that's going on with supply chain and you know, just the whole world economy. But I think the question you had before that was,
about planning for these in the future. So if you're negotiating on these contracts now, how do you make sure you're not burned when lumber goes up?
Yeah. So that's what I said. But then the other question you had was the small projects versus large projects.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely, I mean, these larger projects are very efficient. Everything is stacked. Everything is engineered and reverse engineered to make sure it works. And I mean, the level of refinement, say, to where the mullions are, and making sure that the cadence of the mullions is such that it makes sense with the manufacturing process. But it's also an aesthetic decision. And the height and width of all these things has to be to almost the inch to make it right and make it affordable to build. But I worry also about the look and the feel and the color and the finish and all these different things. So you got to balance all that stuff out. But it's easier to do it on a larger project. If you're doing a 6-flat, it's very inefficient, and the cost per square foot on a 6-flat versus the cost per square foot on a 25-story building is completely different. It's way higher per square foot if you're doing a smaller project. So, so this is a more efficient way of providing housing to people.
When you're building something like this, where do you land on price per square foot, construction-wise?
If I say that number, it's not going to mean anything really, because everybody looks at things differently. They say, per gross square foot, per rentable square foot.
We have the amenities here.
Yeah. So I'm not going to answer that question and then also some people may not believe what the answer I would give. Okay. So the point is, it's interesting how everything falls into place. The cost of construction, inflated with, where we are in, the US and everything, inflated to today, and then analyzed next to the rent rate that you can provide that the market will accept. It's incredible how they're in tune. The cost of providing this product and the cost of offering this product to the market, it's right there, and there's this sliver of profit.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing. And every city it's a little different, but market forces are real. They figure out what can you buy the land for? What can you build a building for? What can you rent this for? Whether it's a studio or a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, everything's different.
When someone figures out the price of land, they're like, okay, well, we have this finished project at X. We know it's going to cost X to build, and they're going to have these soft costs. We can do the land at Y.
It's all figured out, exactly. Yeah. So the land broker knows this. Mm-hmm. The leasing agent who's leasing it knows this. Mm-hmm. The general contractor who's building it knows. Everybody knows, and it's just a kind of amazing, economic kind of like puzzle.
Have you chosen the partners you work with? For instance, Lincoln Property Management. There's a lot of companies that do this. What did you find about them that stood out to you? How did that work?
Try to surround myself with really smart people. People who are smarter than me, that are better than anyone else at what they do. So Lincoln I find to be just absolutely top notch. Clark Construction, top notch general contractor. All our consultants and engineers are the best in the field. But it's also people I like. I want to work with people I like. It's like, I don't want to work with people that are just, it's just not pleasant to work with them. So I want to be with people that I would like to have lunch with.
Yeah, you work with people you like and trust, right?
Yeah, and so it's both of those things. They have to be really good, and we have to just like each other, because this is each one of these projects. It's a 2 or 3 year endeavor. So and it's more fun that way, because this is fun. Doing this design development thing is just a lot of fun, and you might as well do it with people you like.
Anything keep you up at night? When you're doing a project like this?
Sure. I mean, I sleep like a baby, but I do worry about, the financing and, paying off the loans and getting that next lease and, making sure we're not making a mistake and thinking 2-3 steps ahead. and double checking that our last decision was the right decision, and should we stick with that or you know, so it's a lot of, you know, analysis, and it's, you know, I guess a lot of anxiety, but it's like functional anxiety.
You're
I think
making the decisions.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna live with that decision. The project's success is gonna live off of that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's, you know, but it's nothing that, you know, a cup of coffee in the morning or a glass of wine at night can't fix, you know?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Is there, when you're figuring out the size of a unit and the bedroom count, are you looking at competition? Are you talking to consultants? How do you figure out how large the studio is going to be, or how large this one bedroom is going to be, or how many we're going to have on this floor?
That's a great question. So obviously, you know, there's certain things that, you know, zoning dictates that, you know, less than, you know, 699, you know, feet is an efficiency. It's not a actual dwelling unit.
Okay.
So that's kind of the raw
People that don't know,
definition.
what's an efficiency?
Efficiency is, you know, like a studio basically, you know, that doesn't have a true bedroom.
Okay.
And so there's that kind of raw, abstract definition, but then you got to really delve into the market. And so we look at all the, you know, all the quality projects that the competition is doing. So we look at those, and we, you know, we critique them, and we say, oh, that's a nice way of, you know, setting up that kitchen or something, or
And do you
or this.
actually visit the sites? And how do you
Yeah.
explain that to, like, how do you call them and set that up?
Yeah, it's pretty friendly nowadays. So
Okay.
you get, and we, you know, most of us know each other. So, you know, we say, hey, I'll give you a tour of Parkline if you reciprocate and give me a tour of, you know, this other building. And so everybody's pretty friendly about it, and they learn from each other. So that's kind of the basic way, you know, it's done. But yeah, we look at the competition, we critique it, we make sure that we're learning from that and improving our product so it's better. But you know, in actually designing it, you know, we design the units with furniture in mind. So we actually lay out, you know, the sofa and the bed and the night table and the, you know, the dining room chair, dining room table. And whether it's for 2 people or 4 people or 6 people, the table, it's all drawn in there. Everything's contemplated, the kitchen, and everything's to scale. And you know, we put rugs in and everything, so we really have a sense of the space.
You know how much space between the wall and how far the chair is going to kick out.
Exactly. All that has to be taken into consideration. So it's real. So our planning is based on that. And I find that some of the competition doesn't do that, because you walk into some of these units and they have, you know, a chaise. They don't have a sofa because they couldn't think of how it's going to actually be set up, or
You're absolutely right.
they have no room for
You walk into some units, you're like, this doesn't work.
yeah. Or I've seen, you know, a bed up against a wall, you know, which is a faux pas. You just don't do that. So all
What do
these,
you mean?
well, I mean, if you have a queen size bed and 2 people are in the bed, you don't want to have to crawl over the other person,
Oh,
right?
I got you. So there's no nightstand. There's no.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
I got
it's
you, I
like-
got you.
So anyway, those kind of things are just, you know, planning 101, you know, and so I think our floor plans are, you know, as good as anything in the market,
I agree
and
with
that
that.
we really take time on that. It starts from that. That's the derivative, and then it's it's an extrusion. You just go vertically from that floor plan, just gets repeated over and over. So and that creates the architecture, and then, you know, like if you have a bay window, that creates the architecture on the outside. Like in Linea, we did this bay window design. That created all the architecture, you know, and you know, keeping it simple and buildable and beautiful.
I think I'm out of questions. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. It's a beautiful building.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see more of your buildings. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Got it.